Metaphor ReFantazio, Persona 3 Reload, Baldur's Gate 3, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. In the past 2 years, we've seen a big resurgence of turn-based strategy RPGs. Once considered a niche genre, turn-based games have broken into the mainstream once again, with Baldur's Gate 3 even winning Game of the Year last December. In this video, we're going to dive into the rising popularity of turn-based games, why these games have become such a success, and how AAA developers can take notes from this genre of games. So without further ado, let's buckle up, grab some iced coffee, and take our turn in exploring these beloved games. Once upon a time, turn-based combat games were part of the mainstream. Released in 1997, Final Fantasy VII was a generation-defining turn-based JRPG. The Pokemon Game Boy games were also incredibly popular turn-based combat games during the 1990s, with Pokemon becoming one of the biggest franchises in the world. BioWare also catapulted themselves to mainstream success with real-time with pause strategy games, a cousin of turn-based RPGs. Titles like Baldur's Gate, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and Dragon Age Origins saw massive mainstream critical and commercial success. While these games were not exactly turn-based combat, they employ a lot of the same strategic and cerebral elements of gameplay. But as technology advanced and video games started to become more mainstream in the 2010s, game developers started to take the stance that turn-based games were quote-unquote too boring for mainstream audiences. The Final Fantasy games pivoted away from their turn-based roots in Final Fantasy 15, 16, and the FF7 Remake series. Bethesda bought the Fallout IP and turned the franchise into an open-world action RPG, quite successfully I might add. Likewise, BioWare moved away from the real-time with pause strategy combat of their earlier titles, opting for more action in Jade Empire, Mass Effect, Anthem, and most recently Dragon Age the Veilguard. The Veilguard will be the first full-blown action game in the franchise. Seeing the success of games like Skyrim, Far Cry 3, and The Witcher 3 has certainly had an impact on the RPG space, with many developers moving away from strategy games in search of a larger audience. When BioWare released Dragon Age Origins in 2009, the game was incredibly successful, but diving into the game's analytics, the devs noticed a lot of players were quitting the game within the first hour, and they came to the conclusion that players were not particularly interested in strategy combat, so they sought to create something flashier with Dragon Age 2. This sentiment really carried through in BioWare's meme-worthy marketing about the Button Awesome Connection.
We call it the Button Awesome Connection now, where every time you press a button, something awesome happens.
You're making me very nervous with that thing, you know.
And speaking of awesome, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Marvel Strike Force. Marvel Strike Force is a squad-based RPG where you can bring the Marvel Universe into your own home. Assemble a team of powerful Marvel heroes to take on supervillains with endless possibilities for team compositions and strategy. And the best part is you can play for free. Click on my link in the description to download Marvel Strike Force right now, and use my promo code to get free characters like Agatha Harkness and Blade this month. Marvel Strike Force offers a variety of PvE and PvP game modes for you to conquer, such as Campaign, Arena, Blitz, and Alliance War, a massive weekly battle. Play with friends or other players to join forces, complete challenges, and earn rewards. Marvel Strike Force also has raids and Cosmic Crucible, where you can go toe-to-toe with other players in a tournament battle. You can recruit both heroes and villains across the Marvel multiverse, including Iron Man, Wolverine, Venom, and much more. New players can unlock up to 17 total characters in their first 30 days, including Spider-Man, Deadpool, Thor, Captain America, and many more. But there is even more to celebrate this spooky season. Use promo code Halloween to get 100 free shards for Zombie Iron Man, 600k gold, and 480 L2 training modules. This will give your account a great head start to take you to the next level. So what are you waiting for? Click on my link in the description or scan the QR code to download Marvel Strike Force right now. And don't forget to use my promo code to get free characters. Action RPGs and open-world action games began to dominate the mainstream in the 2010s with titles like Skyrim, Far Cry 3, Dark Souls, Fallout 4, and The Witcher 3. But by the present day, this genre has become incredibly saturated and competitive, especially with the rise of countless Souls-like spin-off games. And since this genre has become so saturated, gamers are simply not willing to play a lot of the action games if the gameplay is subpar. 2023 and 2024 has seen some massive flops in this space. Immortals of Avenum, Star Wars Outlaws, Forspoken, and many other forgotten titles have been colossal commercial flops for AAA studios and publishers. Immortals of Avenum failed to crack 1,000 concurrent players on Steam despite a big marketing push and over $100 million in development costs. Star Wars Outlaws received terrible reviews and sent Ubisoft's stock price plummeting, with talks of a potential buyout of the company currently underway. Forspoken cost Square Enix around $100 million, but dismal sales led to the closure of the studio who developed the game. Meanwhile, there are many turn-based games outperforming these action games that were supposedly designed for mainstream success. Larian Studios carved their own path, selling over 1 million copies of Divinity Original Sin in its first week of release in 2017. The game has gone on to sell an estimated 7.5 million copies, and the studio would go on to even greater successes with Baldur's Gate 3 last year. In the process, Larian never explicitly chased a mainstream audience. They simply sought to stick to what they knew best and aimed to make it more ambitious. I think the success of Baldur's Gate 3 shocked even Larian, with over 10 million sales according to estimates and a bunch of Game of the Year awards in 2023. Owlcat Games is a small developer based in Cyprus. They got their start with Kickstarter projects, leading to the creation of Pathfinder Kingmaker and its sequel Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Both of these titles feature real-time with pause strategy combat with an option to go turn-based instead. And in less than 10 years, Owlcat has become a very commercially successful studio in the RPG niche. Last winter, they released Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, a turn-based RPG, which grossed over 12 million in the first month on Steam and went on to sell at least 500,000 copies. The recent Void Shadows DLC has also been very well received amongst fans. Atlas West, the makers of Metaphor ReFantazio and the Persona games, also paved their own way, creating their own signature brand of stylistic turn-based JRPGs. Earlier this year, Persona 3 Reload, a remake of the 2006 classic, became the fastest-selling title in the studio's history after crossing 1 million sales in its first week. But this studio record would be broken just 8 months later when Metaphor ReFantazio sold over 1 million units in less than 24 hours, as well as racking up tons of high scores from critics and fans alike. Meanwhile, Square Enix has been facing financial difficulties after titles like Forspoken, Final Fantasy XVI, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth underperformed in the sales department. Starfield's Shattered Space DLC from Bethesda was largely panned by fans and critics alike. Starfield has failed to maintain player counts that match previous titles like Skyrim, and last weekend, Persona 5 Royal, a turn-based JRPG released in 2018, had more players than Starfield. The jury is still out on Dragon Age the Veilguard, with its release date rapidly approaching. But based on the new combat style alone, which looks like a God of War knockoff, it's clear that BioWare still thinks that chasing that action game genre is the way to go. At the end of the day, action games still do have a larger audience overall. I think we can see that when comparing a game like Space Marine 2 versus a turn-based RPG like Rogue Trader set in the same universe. But great turn-based games will outperform mid or bad action games. Turning your franchise away from turn-based into action is not a surefire means of success or capturing a larger market. And turn-based games can clearly reach a massive audience if the game is appealing enough. So to me, it's not surprising that we're seeing a resurgence in turn-based RPGs, because we have a handful of studios that are committed to creating top-tier games in the genre. And I think moving forward, these kinds of games will continue to find an audience. So what do you think about the recent resurgence in turn-based RPGs? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.